Peak Performance Secrets starts right now. Hello, and welcome. My name is Kamoya Benjamin, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's episode of Peak Performance Secrets. For those of you who are watching for the very first time, my name is Kamoya, and I help people to create more, whatever more represents. Whether it's more impact, more income, more clarity, more decisiveness. I work with individuals and teams in service of their goals and dreams. And what that looks like in peak performance, which is how I identify myself, is by really seeking to understand, wait a minute, what's the inner game? How's my mindset contributing to my results and creating what I have in my life? And it's really deploying yourself at the optimum mindset and skill set in order to create more. Again, whatever more represents. Now, the last 2 days, I have been teaching on a series on mentorship. And I talked about the mystery that creates mastery, which is what mentorship is, and that is how I see it. And I felt that it was important for me to share my own personal story of how mentorship for me has been a great process and the mystery that has created the mastery that you see. I love to say I was not born like this. I was not always this organized. I was not always this articulate. There are mentors that have been with me in my journey. Now, the two types of relationships that I've had, or mentoring relationships I've had, are number one, informal mentoring relationships, and two, formal mentoring relationships. And what's the difference? Informal mentoring relationships is what happens in society, is what happens in life, is what happens at home when you have parents and they're raising you up. They're literally mentoring you. They're guiding you. They're showing you the path of life. They're teaching you how to tap into your greatness, how to relate with others in society, and they're guiding you through a path of growth and development to realize the fullest potential that is within you. And so I have significant relationships that are of that nature. But I also do have formal mentoring relationships where it was clear that I was a mentee and I was being guided by this particular individual. And I want to take the shortest time possible. There's a lot that we could talk about, but I do not have at my command the time to get into every little detail. But what I want to give you is a big highlight. Think about, zooming out and looking at my mentoring journeys and really seeking to understand what they have been for me and why that sparks within me a desire to mentor others. My first mentoring relationship, which is informal, was and still is with my maternal mother. The amazing Joanne, you're watching this, I salute you. My mother was my first CEO. She was my first boss. And she taught me the value of money. She taught me the entrepreneurial, tips and secrets. She taught me the language of business. She taught me how to be street smart. I pick her out as my first mentor because I see from where I am today that if she had not done the work that she did, I would have been quote unquote unfit for the relationships with my three other mentors. I would have been unfit because for me to survive in those mentoring relationships, especially the second one, which has been my longest mentoring relationship, I probably would not have fit in there. I probably would not have survived. And at the age of 8, my mom and I were sitting in our house having what was going to be our dinner, and it was stewing in between us. And she looked at me straight into the eyes and she told me, make yourself someone. Make yourself someone. She said it in a language that she had to learn, which was my father's language, my dad's, language, which is Kikuyu. And she told me, wait to emodo. She looked me straight in the eye and said, wait to emodo. And my mom had a tone that night that communicated to me the seriousness of what she was talking about. As a young boy, I was a bit mischievous and I was very cheeky. I always was up to something that was not really good. And so when she said these words to me, I quickly raced through the memory of how my day was and the previous day, and I was checking whether I had done something mischievous that would warrant a beating, because that was commonplace. My mom never spared the rod, and she was there that evening telling me, make yourself someone. But I noticed that, wait, she's not trying to beat me. She's not speaking from a place of anger, but she was speaking with the deep concern of a parent, deep concern of a mother, wanting me to become a different man. And those words have stuck with me to this date. And those words continue to, implore for me to step in and really build my potential, build my skills, and become the man that I know that I can be. And she saw something within me, and that's one of the most important things that I believe that mentors do, and that is they see something within others that they themselves are not able to see at that particular point. So my mother was the most influential of the first mentors. A lot to talk about, story for another day. The second person that mentored me is Bishop Stanley Mwalili and his wife, Anne Mwalili. And I met them at the age of 15. I was about, no, I was 18. I was 18 when I connected with them. And this was the beginning of a 15-year mentoring journey with them. It was my longest mentoring experience, and it was the most profound and has been the greatest foundation to the work that I do today as a coach, as a speaker, as a trainer. Working with them in a mentoring relationship that had a spiritual foundation where I was an armor bearer. An armor bearer, in the traditional sense, was this person who would carry an armor. They would carry the instruments of war. They would carry the shield. They would carry the sword for the leader. For those of you who know, David was an armor bearer for a time for King Saul. And so an armor bearer would carry the armor, and they would go before and in front of the king. It was also seen in some way as, a bodyguard of some sorts, like you needed to get to this person before you could get to the king. And so the way I understood God's instruction for me in that season of my time, which was a divine connection with Bishop Stanley Mwalili, was really to serve as his armor bearer. I was 19, and when 19-year-olds, my peers, were heading out to university, I did not have that opportunity. But what God saw fit for me is that he put me under the instruction and guidance of Bishop Stanley Mwalili. I learned a lot through that season. Number one, just modeling, him modeling. He did not say much, apart from maybe, teaching on Sundays. He did not say much, but I learned a lot from how he did his things, how he led his family, how he raised his children. I had the rare opportunity, a front row seat, almost every night, watching how he led, watching how he navigated his spiritual journey, watching how he led his children, how he parented, the father that he was, the husband that he was. And why this is such an important thing for me in my mentorship journey is because I came from a background where my dad had left us at around age 13. This is a very critical age for any human being, and more so a young man who is coming into his own and seeking to understand life. At the point when I needed to understand what it means to become a man, that was not there. And so I was in this space in my journey where I needed to grow up quickly, because in a family of four and being a second born, my brother and I kind of took on the roles and responsibilities of taking care of our siblings and kind of standing shoulder to shoulder with my mom and, building business and creating enterprise that would supply for our needs. And it is in that season that I really had an opportunity to grow. I had learned some lessons, yes, from my dad, but by virtue of his work and him traveling and us not sometimes, being together and me being in boarding school, I did miss out on those early opportunities to kind of learn those critical lessons. But at this point, when I'm now understanding myself and I know myself and I can decipher lessons and pick them up, I did learn a lot from Bishop Stanley. I think it's fair to say that for a period of more than 10 years, I had meals at his house because we were doing something. There was something he was, advancing his studies. I was there doing something, typing his assignments and learning from him and having meals there. I mean, for a big segment of my life, I was right there. But what is the most critical thing about this relationship, in addition to the many lessons that I could take 2 or 3 hours to just break down for you, story after story and lesson after lesson, is that he put in my hands the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John Maxwell, the very first edition. And he signed the book and he handed it to me. And that book, I believe, shaped my worldview and set me onto the path that I am on today. At 19, when I would probably be clubbing and going out with my friends, I was buried in books, reading about leadership and understanding the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership. He not only gave me the book, but opened up an opportunity for me to study leadership at 19. And in the church, we had this VHS, a 14-inch Sony, and a VHS at the bottom. And, we would place in the tape, and John Maxwell would be teaching. And I was in the crowd taking the notes and understanding leadership. Those who were seated, on my left, on my right, in front of me, and behind me were, elders. They were elders to me. They would have been, more so to speak, the age of my father. Yes, there were youths within the group, but I felt like I was this kid who was 18 and connecting with these guys who were well advanced in life. They were in corporate, careers, and they were building their work. And here I am, this young guy trying to figure my way through life. And I sat in those sessions and I went through the first year and the second year. And when the opportunity came to say, hey, who wants to lead? I raised my hand and I said, sign me up. When there are opportunities to lead in the church, I was like, sign me up. But really what allowed me that mentorship opportunity is to give of my time and give of my skills to serve and to give everything that I have in terms of time and talent. I discovered my gifts. I discovered my abilities. I knew I was good at creativity. I knew I was good at design. I started to set up a space into business. I went into, furthering my education. I completed my diploma. I completed my degree. I graduated. I completed my master's, all in that season of mentorship and growth. And he constantly opened doors for me. What is most profound is that at one point, when the church was going through leadership development, I, yes, signed up. But also when the church began to go through strategic planning for the year and thinking about how all the departments are going to be, planning the events, he put me right in the middle of that whole process. One of the powerful things of that journey is how it built belief in me. It gave me exposure. Here I was, this 21, 22-year-old, and I'm contending with these, more experienced guys and learning from them how to plan departments, how to plan events, strategic terminologies like vision and mission and core values and activities and strategic initiatives and objectives. And all these were things that I had not necessarily gone to class for, but God allowing the opportunity to be there for me to learn and to develop, I believe is the foundation that I'm very firm foundation that I'm standing on today. I'm deeply grateful for my mentors, and I make a point of letting them know that I'm deeply grateful for them. I reach out to them and I tell them, hey, thank you so much. It is because of this that I was able to do this. And I do remember this particular organization when we had gone out to do leadership training. So he was not only a pastor, but he was also very gifted, strategic mind, and very gifted in training. And immediately he identified opportunities in the marketplace and was identified as a trainer and began to offer training for leadership and development. That's a space that I wanted to go into. And after he had done it a couple of times, he would invite me many times to be at the back of the room and to sit down and to observe how he was doing it. I was being mentored. And that's why I said mentorship is the mystery that creates mastery. Because all this time I was imbibing this information, and he knew that I could do it. I thought I wanted to do it, but I didn't know how. I didn't have the belief in myself, but he gave me that opportunity and that platform. And I remember in this top organization where he was doing training and doing workshops for, and he told them, guys, it's my time to kind of move into the things that I'm working on and focus on building the church, which was at that time transitioning into a bigger property. The school was, I mean, there was a lot of priorities. And he said, you know what, it's time for me to focus on what is my first calling, which is being a pastor. And so I will not be available to take up some of the workshops and trainings that you have. But hey, guess what? I'm not just going to walk out the door and leave you high and dry. I've got a guy here who I think you want to work with. He came to tell me this later. And again, that really speaks to this idea of belief, in that he told them that if you don't work with this guy, he's going to be your next competition. That's huge. That's huge. Okay, yeah. I was a young guy. The best word to describe me is chutzpah. And at that age, I don't think I would have said that of myself. I didn't have that belief. But he saw that belief in me. He saw that capacity and potential within me. And he kind of put my name there. Long story short, I did an audition and they called me, and I was their trainer for about 4 or 5 years, for the time that they were doing this. And that gave me the foundation again that I'm standing on today. Mentorship is the mystery that creates mastery. That he would open doors for me and create spaces for me to step in. No benefit to him. He didn't say, give me 10% of everything you make. No, just to see me thrive. Mentorship is the mystery that creates mastery. In a world where everybody just wants to get all that they can, put it in a can, and sit on the can, he gave of his time, he gave of his talent, he gave of his treasure many times to see me take off. I mean, I could talk, 15 years. What do you expect? I cannot summarize 15 years in 10, 15 minutes. No, there's a lot in there. But here's the statement that I would like to use to qualify everything that I may not have said up until now. I believe that God used Bishop Stanley Mwalili to almost rescue me from the perils of youth and ways in which we're caught up by the immaturity that comes with that age. We're caught up by the cares and the concerns and the pressure of the world at that time. That is the best way that I would summarize that. Number two, God used him to model things that I had not seen in my own family. I had not seen love between man and wife in a way that I saw it between him and his wife. I had not seen parenting in the way that I saw it with him. I had not grown up per se, so to speak, in a functional family. And the nights and the days that I spent picking him up and picking up his wife and dropping them at home and working from their house and being in their business and understanding everything that concerns life and ministry and God and spirituality. Those are the opportunities that I learned from him, what it is and what it means to be a man. I want to state that I believe I am, to a large extent, the husband that I am to my wife because I watched him and how he interacted with his wife. That I watched the conversations, that I watched the intimacy, and I watched the friendship and how it blossomed. And that is a picture. That is a picture that I cannot unsee in my awareness of what it means to be a great mentor. The other thing that I would speak to is in that same season, I had, while at the University of Leadership, International Leadership University, ILU, had an opportunity to meet the Vice Chancellor. And the Vice Chancellor called us into a boardroom one Friday morning. Breakfast was set, and there we were. He called us into the room. He was sitting right there, and he began to teach. He began what was called Bellon's breakfast. Emmanuel Bellon was the VC at International Leadership University, just began to mentor us. And we didn't know what to call it. And so we called it Bellon's breakfast, because he would set up breakfast and he would sit with us and he would mentor us. He would teach us. He would question us. He would interrogate our thinking, our intentions and our actions, and why we were doing what we were doing. And that was a profound moment to develop our spiritual capacity, to develop our professional expression. In many ways, I had learned a lot from Bishop Stanley Mwalili, and this was a great foundation as well, just to be mentored by someone else in a different capacity. I did take amazing lessons that helped steep me in my spiritual foundation, big time. My spirit was formed. My relationship with God was formed in profound ways. You know, when you talk about beginning to hear God for yourself, beginning to kind of use your spirituality in the marketplace to navigate strategic decisions and to speak out in boardrooms with confidence and clarity about what you sense needs to happen, that got solidified at a time when my world was caught up by, number one, I had just gotten married. Then, we were having a baby, and I was here pursuing my master's, and I had a business that was running, and I was still a mentee, and my I felt like 24 hours was just not enough. And mind you, at that time, I'm not only building my coaching business, I'm also running my advertising agency. And at the same time, all these other things were happening. I did lose touch with my spiritual, and I was like, you know what? Salvation is a ticket that I have. I'm going to heaven. Good stuff. I got it there. Let's get into the marketplace. And at that season, in that time, what I needed was the spiritual formation to apply my faith in marketplace dynamics and decisions in order to create the outcomes that God wants for me. And that was a profound season in my teaching and my journey. And together with him, he kind of mentored and guided us to develop a heart for mentorship. And we formed Global Mentorship Network, and we're the first group of executives and mentored many individuals through the process. I was head of communications, and we began to do a lot of work in mentoring individuals. All this time, as I'm growing and I'm developing, there's somebody that's in my radar that's called Paul Martinelli. And I want you to see how these mentors have all come into my orbit as God has grown and orchestrated my path and my journey. Starting with my mom, who then in that same orbit, I began to meet Bishop Stanley Mwalili. And as I was with, stepped into ILU and I'm doing my master's, and now Professor Emmanuel Bellon, I must say, is in my orbit. And I still have the three mentors, at the same time. And at this time, I've joined the John Maxwell team, and I'm learning from John, who I was introduced to by Bishop Stanley Mwalili. And while I'm there, I meet this guy who's called Paul Martinelli. Paul Martinelli built the John Maxwell team. And this guy is in my radar and it's expanding my awareness, and I'm learning from him. And I join mentorship in the John Maxwell team, and I have closer access to him. I'm trying to draw nearer to him. And while all this is happening, I now begin to, utilize all the resource that has come from these mentoring relationships in the marketplace. And man, I'm exploding. Business is happening, and I am beginning to become a fountain of wisdom and value to my clients, my coaching clients, my mentees, organizations where we go in and we are sought for ideas. I am now this guy who is being looked to. And I want you to see that I'm standing on what they call the shoulders of giants, still do until today. Now, in mentorship with Paul Martinelli, it has paying to play at that level, paying to access his time, his expertise, paying to access his time, most of all, paying to get him to read my email, to get him to tune into where I am, to jump into that space. And as soon as I got into that space, it was like an overflow of wisdom, of support, of guidance. Many are the times when Paul has given me more time than I had paid for. He gave me more access than I had paid for. I've slept in his house. I've had breakfast in his house. I've spent 3 days with him and seeking to understand where I am. He's built multi-million businesses, and where I am in my journey now, giving a lot of appreciation to all the mentors that I've had. I'm at a place where I want to build something that he has built, and I'm sitting at his feet to say, help me understand. But guess what? I believe that I'm able to stay at that level because of the foundation that I have, because of the people that I'm grateful for, that mentored me in this journey. I don't know who my next mentor is going to be, but as I stand right now, Paul is my mentor. Emmanuel is my mentor, not having as much, frequency of interaction, but we meet. He's come to my home, and he's seen the growth, he's seen the children, he's seen the ministry, he's seen all that we're doing. And I wanted to share this with you because wherever you start, find the mentor that can feed the thing that's growing within you. Find the mentor that can feed the thing that's growing within you, and then start from there and build up. Other mentors will come into your orbit. God will cause men and women that have what you need to come into your orbit and to come into your space. I am deeply grateful for the mentors that I have. I look back and I say, I don't want to limit God to say that there's no other way he would have done it. But I do know that when we ignore counsel and we do not tune into the people that God brings into our orbit, the inability to be faithful with that relationship blocks us from accessing the next relationship in our mentorship journey. So whoever you have in your life right now, be accountable to them. Show up for that mentorship relationship. Give it all that you got, whether it's you serving, seeking to serve, or whether it's you paying to play. Either way, mentorship is a mentee-driven process. Mentorship is a mentee-driven process. I am at a stage in my life now where I am opening up my mentorship, platform for you to come in and be mentored. And the promise is for you to thrive at home, at work, and society. I'm standing on the shoulders of the giants that I've just talked to you about, the 4 most significant mentoring relationships in my life. And the promise is for you to thrive in work, thrive at home, at work, and in society. Join me by clicking the link that is in the description below, and get started on peak performance mentorship. Again, to help you thrive in all the domains of life. That's a starting point, and I do know it's a very important starting point in your mentorship journey. Thank you for tuning in to Peak Performance Secrets today. I feel that it was just so personal for me to share with you my origin story and how exactly I've got to where I am. I was not born like this. I was made into this. And that's a bit of a story into the journey that I have gone through with my mentors. Thanks for your time. Blessings, be well, and bye for now.